Hello and welcome to an impromptu stream from the Effect Podcast. I'm Matthew, and down there is my co-host Dave, and over here, no, not over there, over here is the edge of the screen. You can't see anything over here, but over here is Craig Duffy, friend of the show and patron of the show. Thank you very much, Craig.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for having me on.
Now, you are one of our players in the Hammam, and we invite players for an interview, particularly when they've got something quite exciting to talk about. And we understand you have something quite exciting to talk about. But first of all, we ask every player this. Tell us about your life in gaming.
So I'm going to be different from most of the people you get on. I didn't actually start gaming till 2006, so quite recent compared to most of you guests.
Well, if I'd known that, we'd never invite you on, Craig. What the hell? What's this all about?
We want to hear about lives in gaming, not a few years.
What kind of guest is this? Bloody hell.
Yeah, no, okay. I didn't start till I started my PhD. I'd always been on the edge of gaming. I used to do Warhammer. I even LARPed before I did tabletop gaming.
Cool.
Which I can see the...
That's an interesting trajectory, but yeah. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah. I know many LARPers.
Yeah, we've all done a bit of LARPing at one point or another.
We have.
But then moved to Glasgow, started a PhD, joined the Gaming Society there, dived in with Torg, of all games.
Torg?
The
wow.
original.
Blast and the Blast. Blast and the Blast.
Got hooked.
A blast from the blast, Matt said. So it's just going really well, as always.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Got hooked thanks to an awesome GM who she made it just look so simple and it made every session so enjoyable. And within the first year, I was switching from playing to GMing. Learned the hard way how much she'd been hiding all the difficult stuff behind the screen. And then it's been, well, I'd say downhill ever since, but an addiction ever since.
Let's just pause on Torg, because I don't think we ever played Torg. Did you, Dave?
I don't think so, no.
And I think I understand it. I understand the basic concept, but for all our listeners, tell us about what Torg was all about.
So Torg is it's not dimension hopping, it's dimension spanning. You've got the Earth that has been invaded by essentially generic settings from other realities.
Fantasy setting, a sci-fi type setting.
You've got fantasy, you've got cyberpunk, you've got techno demon sci-fi, you've got pulp magic Egyptians with Indiana Jones superheroes. You've got Living Land, which is dinosaurs worshipping a living goddess. A bit of everything, all invade the Earth, and you're trying to fight off reality, essentially, and save Earth. It is an epic setting and an epic game, very much of its time. It was early 90s it was first published. So there's, I think there's 5 different magic systems.
Oh wow! Yes, yeah.
Was it designed? Was it really designed for students who are late at night smoking something they shouldn't be whilst they're playing this game? Because it sounds quite freaky.
Well, it's interesting because it's West End Games, so it's the same people that did D6 Star Wars.
Right. And was the system anything like D6 Star Wars?
No, nothing. It's a D20 based, but it's not. Sorry, it uses a D20. It's not D20 based. You roll and you compare your number to a table to work out what your bonus is.
Oh, it's one of those games.
Very much of its time.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then last couple of years, there's obviously been a new version, Torg Eternity, that updates
Came out from Ulysses Spiel or something, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
The new version draws a lot of ideas from Savage Worlds.
Right.
Keeps the basic system, but updates it somewhat to a more modern, streamlined approach.
You mean no table? No rolling and checking against the table?
No, they still have that.
Good.
But I think there's still a place for doing that once in a while. I think I dusted off my old Victory Games James Bond, which is on here somewhere. And
I've heard tales about that.
That's got a big table in the middle of it, but it's a great game. We had a lot of fun playing it back in the day. I'll see if I can find the success table.
But I do remember that seemed to be relatively speedy, even though there was a
quality
table.
results table, which is all about how your percentile die roll does whatever.
Yeah,
But
excellent.
There's a place for it. I like it still.
Yeah, there's certainly a place for it. I mean, I've still got the core books from the original game. I became a bit of an addict hunting down them on eBay. But
Yeah, I've stopped doing that nowadays. I just spent too much money on old edition stuff.
And we're buying so much new stuff. But we'll come on to new stuff in a moment. We stopped at Torg Eternity. What happened after then? What else were you playing?
So I try and play a bit of everything. I don't play much D&D. I think because I didn't get introduced through D&D, it just never grabbed me the way it does some people. So I try and play a bit of everything, mostly traditional games, but with a lot of indie games at the moment. I'm just looking at my shelf. A lot of Cortex.
So this is where you and I first met, because I was running the new Firefly. We'd played Serenity before years ago, Dave and I. Very good campaign that Dave ran there. But Firefly, the role-playing game, had come out with the Cortex Plus system. I remember I ran a game at Dragon Meat, and you were sat at that table.
Well, I'd actually been sat at your Savage World version a couple of years before.
Oh, God, no, you're right. You beat me to it. Yes. And you came back for the Cortex version.
Isn't it embarrassing, Matt, when you completely forget the first time you met somebody? Especially on a live stream.
I'm sorry, it is. And now the whole world has seen it. But you're right. Yes. The problem for me is I conflated both of those because they were exactly the same scenario.
Yeah, but two great fun systems.
And who did you play? Because we had the crew of Serenity there.
I think I played Simon the first time and then maybe Jane the second time.
Excellent.
I certainly remember asking about grenades, so I probably played Jane.
Yeah, I'm sure you did then. I'm sure you did. I can't remember who else. Oh, I can actually, of course, remember. It's gone out of my head entirely. Lloyd. Yeah, I'm doing so well. I can remember the person I can't remember.
But then you can't remember. Yeah, exactly.
Lloyd, though, was Captain Mal in that second version, wasn't he?
Yes.
And the most enthusiastic Captain Mal I have ever seen in my entire life. I kind of feel pre-Battle of Serenity Captain Mal. He was so enthusiastic.
I think Lloyd and enthusiastic is a pairing any game.
Yes. Yeah.
He is a whirlwind.
Now, stop helping me with my early onset dementia and move on. The Cortex games you were playing. But I think back then you were mentioning Project Cassandra even then. Yeah,
so Project Cassandra, what I'm here to talk about, Kickstarter and Zine Quest at the moment. But yes, I started developing it in 2013, I think it was, as a hack of Lady Blackbird, which I don't know if you're familiar with.
Very simple 2-sheet game, isn't it? I believe.
Yeah, it's a prime example of how elegant game design by John Harper, so Blades in the Dark creator. Just an amazing game. I'd come off that. I'd recently read the original Jason Bourne novels and thought, this system would work for, Cold War spies. It was only ever meant to be a reskin for a one-shot for my group, and it just sort of progressed and drew me into game design.
And the basic principle is you wake up and you don't know that you're a super spy, but then you discover you're a super spy. Is that when you say Jason Bourne?
Jason Bourne, yes, but not Project Cassandra.
Right, okay. So tell us about Project Cassandra. What's the basic principle of Project Cassandra?
So it's a game of the Cold War about Cold War psychics that have heard an apocalyptic vision and trying to prevent that from coming to pass. So the Cold War, the CIA especially, there was loads of secret, often illegal and highly dubious projects into remote viewing, mind control, teleportation, being able to walk through walls. And it essentially says, what if that was actually successful? And then those powered individuals had to save the world from a single apocalyptic event.
And it's got a pretty clever sort of premonition system. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
So yeah, what I knew I wanted to do was that have the ability of being a psychic woven throughout the entire game. So all the characters are psychics, as well as having unique powers. So things like being able to teleport or throw cars in the air or dodge bullets. You have, it's called Premonitions, so that's the meta currency. But the game starts and you have a vision, and then the characters get to add in details of this vision. So the GM sets out the scenario and then they go, oh, but actually this is what we saw, which changes everything. But because they're psychic, they know this in and out of character.
Right.
So you start the game with this vision of Kennedy's going to be shot by someone during his Ich bin ein Berliner speech. We saw an assassin coming out of this building, and then the entire game is about building up to that moment that they've already predicted.
Right. So then everybody's invested in getting to the moment that they've laid out on the table at the beginning of the game. And that moment, so that's effectively the so-and-so coming out of the building, is it? Or the assassination? The GM says assassination. They say, and we saw Blokey Boy coming out the building.
So the game always starts with a vision of the future. And it keeps things vague. It's like the president will be assassinated. And then you might ask the question, right, where do you see the assassin escaping? Or how will you saw the president being killed by a sniper? What's the backup plan? So they have details, but they don't have everything. So there's no, everything is going to happen at bish bash bosh. I'm just going to go to where the assassin will be. They need to work their way along. And some of the questions. Oh, sorry.
No, great. So this is a kind of a joint sort of narrative storytelling game.
Yes, so it's GM led, but the players have a lot of narrative control,
which is really cool. I like that. My own real experience of that is 10 Candles, but that as a game is fabulous.
Yeah.
So I like that very much.
But the questions also like you set up scenes before that final assassination. So, for example, you might say you saw yourself meeting someone at a diner on Highway 59. Why do you have to meet them? And I've had some players turn around and say, well, they're the backup assassin that we have to stop from getting there. And others turn around and say, they're a Russian spy that's got vital information and we need to convince him to tell us what it is. So the influence of the players can totally derail, or not derail, because that's a bad thing.
Totally change the direction.
Yes.
Yeah, form the direction that the story takes.
Yeah, so for example, one of the playtest scenarios that's included with the game is a bit more lighthearted, built around the Apollo missions, and ask the question, what did they really do on the Apollo missions? Some of the players take it very serious, and it's really they were there to spy on a Russian mission that was highly classified. Sometimes you get, well, the Apollo missions were really there to investigate a possible alien crash landing site on the moon. And then suddenly you have giant robots, and we ended one game. Somehow Nixon became a national hero after they rescued him live on air to millions of people.
From the moon, is this?
Well, not from the moon in that particular one, but we had a giant NASA robot that had been reprogrammed by the Soviets who didn't want alien technology getting into the corrupt capitalist hands.
Excellent. Have you ever had an experience where you've said, so why do you have to meet this person on Highway 52? And they've gone, yeah, I don't know.
Not really, but then, I mean, the response to that is you sort of guide them towards it. So you can say, well, what you need to meet someone at Highway 52, right? You don't know why then, but you see yourself in a fight against someone and you ask them to describe who they're fighting. And suddenly the question just changes and you establish the scene in a different way.
I guess with a game like this, you very much, your players know what they're letting themselves in for and are coming with a, with the right kind of mindset and intention to actually want to tell some of the story themselves. So, you shouldn't have to sort of lead your players by the nose too often, I guess.
Yeah, that's certainly
if at all,
part of it. But then one of the other nice things, there's other ways there's rules for asking additional visions. So when they spend these premonitions, they might trigger a vision later in the game. And you ask another question that introduces a new twist that they didn't see coming until then. So you might have, if they walk into maybe a meeting with a congressman, have a vision of, right, you see the congressman's got a weapon in his hand. What is it? And suddenly the scene tone just changes from we need to convince him to suddenly he's a threat.
Yeah.
And is it quite pick up and play then? I mean, how much GM prep do you need to do apart from have that initial scenario or the initial vision in your head and the leading questions that get people generating stuff?
I'd say that's all you really need is that initial. I like to have a paragraph of the description of the vision just to set it out and then the questions. But there's nothing to say that actually the players couldn't ask the questions to one another. The GM could say, right, we're doing a scenario about the Kennedy assassination and then do a round table. What are the questions?
You could get your players to write down a vision each on a bit of card and then just randomly choose one. And that's how you start the game.
Yep.
Yes.
That's certainly a viable option.
So really low prep. In fact, no prep. Just bring a pen and some cards along.
Yeah. And it's all designed to have a single mission. You can play it out in a single session and that's you done, told your story. You can extend it out to 3 or 4 for that mission. And it should still feel like you've achieved a mini campaign. And then if you want to pull it out longer, there's the idea of, well, actually, maybe there's a conspiracy behind all of this. Subsequent visions of unraveling that and revealing who's really behind it all.
So I see that you've got conditions that come into play. And looking at the character sheet on here, your character starts with a load of skills and skill points, but you then, as a player, when you first use that skill, you choose which skill point you're going to put in there. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how that mechanic works?
Yeah, so conditions, they are very much lifted from the ideas from Lady Blackbird. I didn't want hit points, so I wanted to say, right, you are scared, or you're angry, or the one that I really like is you are paranoid, just because that builds into the genre. So they just get marked off when you fail rolls. The GM never rolls in this. It's all player rolls. So when you fail an action,
it's a bit like Tales from the Loop.
Yes.
Player base rolls. If they fail a roll, they take a condition.
Yeah. And it's all, again, it builds into the narrative. If you're being shot at, well, maybe you don't want to injure them straight off. Maybe they're getting scared because the bullets are whizzing past them. Yeah. And then you build up to the injured. In terms of the skills, yes, so you don't start with any pre-assigned skills. The first time you use a skill, you pick from your available list, say, right, I want to be good at this or I'm rubbish at this. Mark it down. That's your skill for the rest of the scenario. 2 reasons I wanted to include that. First, again, this idea of you're psychics and you tend to have the right skills for the job. So there's no point having a skill that you don't actually want to use. Yeah. The second was, again, coming from, I tend to go to a lot of cons, play one-off games. Just been having to have a little input in my character. Say, well, actually, right, I know I'm an engineer, but I'm really good at sabotage. I'm going to play onto that, put all my points into that on the day, and just change things up a bit.
I like that. That's a really nice idea, because it's true. Certainly at the cons, you always get pre-assigned characters, and you haven't got time to actually design them very often yourself. And then by doing this, you build your characters as you go. I like it very much.
And I like that idea of playing to find out who you are.
Yeah.
As well, which I kind of feel comes a little bit from, that philosophy comes from. I'm really struggling with names. Powered by the Apocalypse is what I'm trying to say. A bit.
Yeah.
But we've also seen it in the Bureau and stuff like that. And it's something I remember wanting to do years ago. I wanted to have a role-playing game based on the Invisibles, where you kind of pieced your character together and worked out who you were throughout the adventure. Because that's partly, of course, what the comic of the Invisibles is about. But there we go. We mentioned a little bit about it being kind of Cold War based. Is there a particular time frame that you put it in?
No, I've jumped about throughout. It's generic enough; it could be in any of the time frames. But what I tend to do is pick from real events. So I mentioned the Apollo missions, so I use that as a jumping off point that people know about. They can ground themselves in it. I've got another scenario I said about JFK, the Ich bin ein Berliner speech. Again, it's something people know about, and then you can push it your own direction. Still haven't quite got around to a late 80s one. I keep wanting to. I've been watching the very good Deutschland 83 series. That I want to do something maybe set amongst that fall of communism sort of, but I just don't quite have the right idea yet.
So the game as backed, how many starting scenarios will a backer get with that?
So there's the 2 starting scenarios included, which are the Apollo and JFK Berlin starting ones. So they'll come with vision, opening questions, and some guidance. And then I suppose this is a good point to talk about future reveal for future stretch goals.
Kind of where I was going. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we're currently at just approaching the first stretch goal to move into full color print. The next one after that at 1200 will be allowing me to up the rate that I'm paying my collaborator MZ, who's doing the editing. The one above that, if we reach it, is going to be a trilogy of missions. So connected, an opening assassination type vision, and then unraveling the conspiracy. 2 further ones to do that. Still trying to decide on the jumping off point, the event that will trigger that. So I'll keep that under wraps for now. But so that will be 5 if we reach that.
And those last 3 are sort of a little mini campaign, aren't they? Then.
Yes, that's the aim.
Nice. Now, the reason why I'm kind of looking away is that I'm looking into Kickstarter to up my pledge from just backing you because I like the idea, but actually backing it to get the game now. Because
no, I want to. We do this every time with Dave. Every time Dave says, I'm kind of interested in that game, but I don't think I'll be getting this one. And then we interview them, and suddenly he's going for the top pledge.
Well, you can quite, if you want to go for the top pledge of having a game run for you, that's very generous. Given that we've got almost no time at all for games, I think paying for games is going to be a real challenge. Yeah. Now, I've put up on the screen, covering my beautiful face. It was going to be yours, Craig, but I thought we ought to have the star of the show on the show. I put up on the screen the cover. This is the expected cover of the Kickstarter version. Yep, and you are the first people to be seeing this. Not even.
Nice.
This is an exclusive for everybody watching on YouTube. Our poor podcast listeners won't get to see this.
And this is the point where Craig is thinking, that wasn't official yet. We shouldn't be showing it to the public. Shit. We go,
No. Dave sent it to me on... Dave? No, you're Dave. Craig sent it to me on purpose. I'm useless.
Excellent. You really are not with it today, mate.
Yeah.
So, yes, this is the planned cover. Still a work in progress. I'm awaiting the first test print from Mixum, who are doing the printing for the game, just to check that this works on the page and not just on the screen.
It does look really good.
It looks lovely on the screen, I can tell you that. How's the Kickstarter going?
Wow. I just want to say thank you to everyone that's backed it. And I know there's a lot of Effect listeners on the Discord that have backed it, and thank you for that. I started out with a goal of £400, and we'd hit that, I think, 5 hours in, which I honestly, we're at 2 days in, and I thought we'd just be hitting it now, and we're nearly at 200. We're nearly at 200%, which is £800.
It says 761 at the moment, having just upped my pledge.
It's just been amazing, and I think so much of that is down to the Zine Quest community that's just built up around this event. Everyone's been so supportive of everyone else's games and getting the attention. It's why I wanted to do it as part of this event. As a small creator, I don't think I could have done this in June. Getting eyes on it. It's so difficult.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, because Dave and I keep thinking we ought to do something for Zine Quest, and then it kind of happens and we go, oh, we didn't do anything for Zine Quest. But your Zine Quest campaign lasts for 2 weeks, doesn't it? So we're recording this just after the first weekend of your campaign, and it'll go out right in the middle of that 2-week campaign. So listeners, there's still time to pledge if you haven't pledged already. Is that the same for all Zine Quest? Are you only allowed to have a 2-week campaign if you're doing Zine Quest?
Yes. So Zine Quest is an event Kickstarter started its third year.
This is its third year, yeah.
Every February, short, small goal campaigns. They tend to be around $500 to $1,000. 2 weeks. It's meant to be a black and white zine, but a lot of people
full color cover. I'm looking at here.
It's going to be full color interior as well. A lot of people like to use stretch goals for upgrading.
Color, yeah.
Right, nice.
It's quite loose in terms of the actual rules, but there's been just the last couple of years a big community. I think by the middle of this month, we'd already surpassed the number of campaigns that the entire month saw last year.
And there've been a lot of campaigns this year. And I know there was a little bit of, shall we say, disgruntlement that Free League released the One Ring right in the middle of Zine Quest. I mean, they were going to do it right at the beginning of Zine Quest, but then things were delayed. So.
Yeah, I've heard the same. On one hand, I can understand people saying if they're running a campaign and they've seen people cancel the day after it launched, getting annoyed. But I think no matter when Free League launched, it was going to be, I don't know, what they're at, 500,000 now? I don't know what the current
it depends
is.
What currency you're talking about. It's almost 10 million Swedish krona. It's 800,000 now in pounds.
Not far off £1 million, yeah.
Okay, I didn't realise it got that far. That was going to happen no matter when they launched.
Yeah.
And it was good. I did see that they'd done a tweet out to try and ask people to support small creators.
Yeah, you were one of the first in the queue there to say...
I was, yeah.
Cassandra. Yeah, and I think, honestly, off the back of it, I've just been looking, obviously, I'm a kind of apologist for Free League, and so is Dave, because, that's what our podcast is about. Let's be blunt. But I have genuinely...
It's not called Apologists for Free League, though, is it? So come on.
No, it isn't. No, and neither is it called Free League Shills. But we
No.
might be. Although, as I always point out, we're not paid shills for Free League.
No,
Come on, Free League!
It would be all right if we were, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But coming back to the One Ring, I've seen a number of comments there about it being the people's first Kickstarter. And I'm not saying that everybody who's coming on there to buy the One Ring is immediately going, oh, and there's Zine Quest. But I think there's a crossover there. I think the two could exist side by side.
Yeah. I mean, I think they have to.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be a big game launching every month.
Yeah, I guess the concern is it's a bit like, back in the day when the big blockbuster movies came out in the summer. The little independents wouldn't bring their movies out at the same time because they didn't think they'd get as much viewership. But like you say, there'll always be a big game coming out just around the corner or during your campaign.
Yeah, I think part of it was, unless they were listening to you, obviously, a lot of people were caught out by the announcement of the One Ring. It did seem to come out of nowhere for some people.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess if you weren't looking at that, then you look up and you've got your game going. But I wouldn't be surprised if this wasn't the most successful Zine Quest we've had, both in, as you've already said, in a number of publications, campaigns that are running, but in the money that's raised as well for zine creators.
And I think last year, something like 90+% of all campaigns backed were successful. Which, if you compare that to the average of any Kickstarter, has got to be well above average.
Now we should be keeping this quite short, but I have another question which I want to ask, which is really kind of technical about Kickstarters, and we did this when we talked to Stu Goff as well. But I noticed, you were only asking originally for £400.
Yep.
And I kind of wanted to say, how can anybody make a game for only £400? It looks lovely. You've got beautiful illustrations. You've got an editor that you've said you're involving there. How have you worked out your finances without giving too much away?
That's a bit of a personal question, isn't it? Yeah.
No. So I have asked for less than a lot of Zine Quest campaigns. A couple of reasons. One, MZ, my editor, is a very good friend. I've worked with her before. So we've got a working relationship. Second
so this is what the stretch goal is. Before the stretch goal, it was mates rates. And then...
No, well...
You're not obliged to answer, Craig. It's okay. You can plead the fifth. That's fine.
The other reason... the other two reasons I'm able to do it at that amount, I'm using stock art. So everything art-wise that you see is stock art. The character art is by a great artist called Jay Shields, and he does stock art for the RPG community. It's all on drive-through, so you can pick up a piece for £3-4.
And then you've got the license to use it however you want.
Yep.
Which is brilliant. More people should look at that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And he's got a massive collection. He also does his own Patreon. If you want stock art, I would have a look at that. It's really recommended. Everything else has come from sites such as Flickr, Unsplash, all freely available. And then I've edited it using various tools to get the feel that I want.
Yeah.
And then everything else I'm doing myself. So it's the joy of being an indie game designer. And while I could have got people on board and put the budget higher to pay for them, I thought, this is my first Kickstarter. I want to keep control of it. And also the last couple of years, I've learned to do so many different bits of it just because I can't afford to pay people a fair rate. So I've been doing it myself.
Yeah.
Cool. And you've been developing it since 2013. So there's 8 years worth of salary in there as well for you?
Well, I say that. I say since 2013. I originally thought I was going to publish this 2015. And I brought it to Dragon Meet and had a disaster of a playtest.
I think I remember. I wasn't on that playtest, I assure you, but I remember you afterwards, and you were kind of a physical wreck afterwards.
Yes.
It went really, really badly. Yeah.
I'd essentially changed something in the system, not realizing it then broke something else in the system, and essentially you could not fail an action. So I put it on a shelf for 3 years and just did not look at it until I could just bear rewriting it again. So it's not continuous development since then.
Right. Okay. Then.
Yeah.
So
I would say though, one thing that I do like very much about it, the way that you die, so that when you get your 4 physical conditions ticked off, you then you know the end is coming, but you're not taken out of the scene. You can finish the scene. So I actually really like that as a touch, because normally you're just out. You get that last one, boom, you're gone. But actually, this allows you to sort of narrate a very heroic end to that character's life, which I really like for that kind of game.
Yeah, again, it's trying to play to the genre. You don't just, if you have a spy movie, you die when it's appropriate dramatically.
Yeah. Exactly.
Unless you're such a minor character that you wouldn't be playing them in this game. Like any 00 other than 007, they die straight away. But
or not, as the case may be.
Unless they're the antagonist, of course. And then,
yes, of course.
Then it turned out the death was faked. Well, this has been brilliant, Craig. Thank you very much for telling us all about Project Cassandra.
Thank you for giving me the chance to.
That's okay. We did put this stream out by surprise with only 10 minutes warning, so I haven't got any other questions to ask off any viewers. But people can find you where if they listen to the podcast and they want to know more. You've got a Kickstarter page.
Yep. So if you search for Project Cassandra on Kickstarter, you'll find that. I'm most active on Twitter, hoodoo_voodoo. I'm in quite a few Discords, mostly as Hoodoo, just for keeping it short, or lunarshadow.net. So that's LUNAR shadow.net.
Which is one of the very few blogs that I'm subscribed to, and I find it
thank you.
An entertaining read. Most of the time that you put something up, I'm going, oh yeah, excellent, and I stop whatever I'm doing and.
And then finally, the other 2 places, Drive-Thru RPG and itch.io. Again, search for Lunar Shadow Designs. And
people can download a playtest packet of Project Cassandra if they want to try before they buy. That's on itch.io, isn't it?
Yep, there's a 20-page playtest packet that has all the core rules. Some of them will change in the final game. 4 characters. One of the scenarios that's included, all there. It's all playable. So take it, have a look, and
then go back to the Kickstarter and put some money on the table.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I will actually just add one thing. Thanks to the backers of the Kickstarter, you can also for 3 now get What's So Redacted About Redacted, which was a little game I did last year inspired by Project Cassandra, and the backers of the campaign have unlocked it, made it a free download for anyone that wants it on itch.io.
Cool.
Brilliant.
Lovely.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for joining us, Craig.
Yeah, cheers, Craig.
Thank you.
And I will end the broadcast.